Hello there, and welcome back to Hydroponics Daily, your go-to podcast for everything soilless cultivation. I'm your host, Dr. Russell Sharp, the founder of Utrema Limited. We manufacture interesting fertilizers, novel biostimulants, and organic biopesticides. And today I wanted to talk about an interesting topic, and that's whether people should look to grow tropical, warm-loving crops that are perennial indoors in northern countries like Northern Europe, Russia, Canada, or very far south, like the bottom of Argentina in the southern hemisphere. So does it make sense economically? Well, I always thought it didn't make sense. You know, if you're going to grow in places like Finland and Norway and northern Scotland, it's going to be things like tomatoes and cucumbers. They tend to be the crops that are chosen fairly fast growing, high yielding, that are needed en masse and spoil easily. Whereas something like a mango or an avocado can be stored much longer and cold stored and take so long to grow that the energy required to grow them for years and years and years, 10 years before they fruit in a meaningful way is just not worthwhile. You're better off growing a tomato that will harvest a massive yield in the first year. Things like bananas, you're going to have to grow bananas for a number of years before you get a meaningful yield from them. Now, they only make sense if you've got abundant levels of free heating or extremely cheap heating and also electricity. And so I was interested to see a story from Norway, from the Norwegian Institute of Bioeconomy Research, or NIBIO. And one of the researchers there, Carolina Palmer, is looking at growing avocados for the Norwegian market. So going against what the conventional wisdom says for growing these perennial tropical crops. And the reason why is that because it's really interesting, the average Norwegian eats 2.3 kilos of avocados a year, which equates to 15,000 tons. And that's because in Norway, they have something called Taco Fridays. That must be something in Norwegian because it's Taco Tuesday anywhere in the English-speaking world, I'm pretty certain. Anyway, she's been able to grow avocados in the greenhouses and get a meaningful crop, and they look like they're good avocados. Is the variety Hass? Is that a type of variety? Should have done some research, really, shouldn't I? And the reason why is because they can use waste heat from data centers, metallurgic industries, which Norway has a lot of. It also has a lot of cheap electricity from hydroelectricity. And so, Norway could potentially use this. I think in Finland, they use geothermal heat, and it's certainly in Iceland. So I wonder if Norway also has geothermal heat they can use. 40% of the greenhouse operating costs in Norway are from heating. So not a insignificant amount, whereas in, say, Spain, heating would be next to no cost. So that's really interesting. They tested it on 26 colleagues, and all 26 said it was better than the imported avocados. More buttery and flavorful, no salt or pepper needed. So an increase in quality as well as a potential benefit from the lack of need to import it. Now, it'd be interesting to see if any commercial partners develop this. I mean, as I say in previous episodes, I had an enterprise where I was going to look at growing samphire because I thought it would be better to grow it locally in a really cheap way rather than importing it from Israel, Morocco and Mexico. But no one really cared. They preferred to just carry on with the woody stems. And so, unfortunately, I'm sure Caroline will make a better fist of it than I did. She says that if they closed the borders tomorrow, all Norway would have to eat would be salmon, potatoes, cucumbers and tomatoes, which sounds bad, doesn't it? But why is anyone going to close the border to Norway? They're not in the EU, but they tend to get a better deal out of working with the EU than Britain does. At the moment, we're being punished for Brexit, whereas Norway, the EU doesn't seem to want to punish Norway for any reason in particular. Maybe if they got invaded by Russia. There was a TV program, I think it was on Netflix, where Norway got invaded by Russia because they decided they were going to go net zero and stop pumping oil out of the North Sea. So yeah, if they got invaded by Russia, then there would definitely be an embargo on food going to feed invading Russians, perhaps. That's the only scenario I could see where they would stop the border and they wouldn't be able to get their beloved avocados for Taco Friday. Who knew? Obviously, the average income in Norway is very high due to the oil income. I think it's crazy. It's like 6-figure average income. So they do like the finer things in life over in Norway. So yeah, be interesting to see if they start growing avocados commercially soon. It was a very small scale trial, but they are expanding it and they're moving it to a 6-meter high greenhouse with in vitro plants and micropropagated plants, LED lighting, proper irrigation and pH control. They also found that the Norwegian bumblebees were able to pollinate the tropical avocado plants. They also say that tomatoes took almost 40 years to develop into a stable, high-yielding greenhouse crop, so they don't expect avocados to be commercial next year, but the knowledge they gain will now make it much faster for the next generation. So that's really interesting. If you'd like to know more, then you can find out at the NIBIO website, nibio.no. And yeah, I think that's a really interesting story. And yeah, if you've grown a tropical crop like that, maybe you've grown mangoes. Like I said, Larry Ellison wanted to grow mangoes in his hydroponic greenhouses in Hawaii, but he never managed to do that. If you've managed to do it, then let me know. What's the most unusual crop you've ever grown hydroponically? All right. Thank you very much for listening. If you could leave a review on Apple Podcasts, that would mean a world to me because it means that we shoot up the podcast charts and it would feed my ego and help share hydroponics with a wider audience amongst life sciences and gardening and horticulture chart people who look at those. If you are not listening on Apple, then don't bother leaving a review because it doesn't help in any way. But do check out utrema.co.uk where we have loads of interesting novel techniques, loads of interesting products, and a blog with loads of interesting articles about unusual cultivation techniques. What else can I say? Not a lot. We did a microgreens trial, and we found that I was talking about cut up cardboard as a grow media. That one didn't grow as well as the hemp fiber matting, and also after a few weeks the crop collapsed and what in arable crops we call lodging. And then the two products that worked really well were for chia seeds, the Pure Grow products by Growtech LLC of South Portland in state is that ME. Let me check that. Maine. That worked really well on the chia seeds. And then for onion seeds, their BioStraight felt worked really well. So that was a list of ingredients was biopolymer and natural fibers, whereas the other one, I don't think it's here at list of ingredients, blended hemp fiber. So you want blended hemp fiber for your dicots and your biopolymers for your monocots. They work really well. And the cardboard was crap. All right, that's enough from me today. Thank you very much for listening to Hydroponics Daily. Until tomorrow, goodbye.